Kitty Horrorshow's Anatomy is one of the many standout gems in their oeuvre of experimental horror games. A game in which you explore an abandoned house, collecting tapes and playing them on tape recorders. Through the tapes, you hear someone describe how the different parts of the house are representative of body parts and the inner workings of a person. And as the game goes on, the tapes and the house itself start to convey how a house might feel if it was left to rot by the people who made it. Betrayal, despair, anger, and hunger, melding into a dread-filled nightmarescape. It's a really solid game, and I recommend you check it out and Kitty Horrorshow's other works while you're at it. But more to the topic of the video, right as your descent into residential purgatory begins, there's this tape that is quite different from the rest. Now, this stands out for two reasons. One, it's just a really good way to set a creepy and unnerving feeling that persists until the game ends, and two, I knew what this sound clip was from. The first ever talking dolls created by Thomas Edison. These dolls were made with wooden limbs, a porcelain head, and a metal body, a body that held within it a miniature phonograph. See, back in the early 1800s, recorded sound simply didn't exist. I'm sure for many, recording something and hearing it played back to you seems like a no-brainer, but the technology just didn't exist. That is until 1877, where Thomas Edison invented the original phonograph. Using a piece of tinfoil wrapped around a cylinder in the middle, you would shout a short message into the piece on one side of the cylinder while turning the handle. And this caused a needle inside to vibrate and make a line or groove into the tinfoil. A needle on the other side could then play back what you just recorded, but only for a few times, as the tinfoil would tear up and the recording would be lost forever. Keep that fact in mind, by the way. So as tinfoil obviously wasn't doing the invention justice, Edison aimed to find new ways to record and play back audio. This led to the use of wax cylinders in 1888, and while it still wasn't crystal clear as recordings nowadays, it was still a huge advancement that Edison wanted to put into the hands of as many people as possible. And his means to do so was, yes, the talking doll. By 1890, the dolls were assembled and ready to be sent to toy stores. But up to the last minute, there was still a major concern, and that was the recordings. See, as mentioned before, in order for the phonograph to record something in the first place, you needed to shout into it. And even with that, the audio was very raw, meaning that any normal phrase you'd expect out of a talking doll just wouldn't be understood as well. So the decision was made to sing nursery rhymes, as even through the muffled audio, they could still be recognizable. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried to shout a song before, but it doesn't exactly lend itself to the calming, pleasant nature of a nursery rhyme. And above all that, each recording was entirely unique. Since recording audio, period, was such a new thing, copying audio was still years away from happening. So the women in the factory had to shout the same rhymes over and over and over again. Edison pushed through, however. He wanted the world to see just how many ways the technology of the phonograph could go, and suffice to say, it was a complete and utter failure. Let us count the ways these things flopped. Firstly, the mini phonograph was operated by a crank coming out of the back of the doll. This crank was often misplaced and led to many people going back to the store to ask for replacements or help attaching it. Secondly, the wax cylinder. Remember that mention about tinfoil? Yeah, a very similar thing happened here. Besides the fact that they were just prone to breaking during the shipping process, after being played for just a few hours, the audio would degrade to such an extent that you wouldn't be able to understand what the lady was singing. Didn't catch a word of that, right? Would it help if I told you that was supposed to be Jack and Jill went up a hill? In addition to this, dolls are uncanny as is. The ghastly audio mixed with these dolls were not exactly appealing to children. Thirdly, and this was a surprising one, many people said the dolls weren't lifelike enough, that their mouths should move so that the children could imagine that they were really singing to them. And last but certainly not least, the price. It was $10 for an undressed doll and $20 for a dressed one. Run that through an inflation calculator and you're looking at $330 or $670 respectively, which is a lot for a doll, but it was a steal for a phonograph. Home phonographs at the time could go up to $150 or $5,000 when adjusted for inflation, so Edison thought this would be a slam dunk, but all those issues added up and led to nobody buying the dolls, and those that did, wanting the dolls to be fixed or to just have their money back. Over 7,000 of these dolls were made, under 500 of them were ever sold to customers, and the remaining dolls stayed in storage or on shelves untouched. After only 6 weeks of them being released to the public, Edison withdrew the dolls from the market in hopes of making an improved second edition of this concept. But by the fall of 1890, Edison's toy company, with more than $50,000 in debt, was unable to acquire the loan needed to make these new dolls a reality. And so, Edison cut his losses and moved on. And now, talking dolls are a dime a dozen nowadays, probably helped by people seeing Edison's failure and taking notes for their own interpretation. The dolls may have been a little creepy and kinda horrifying. Not gonna lie, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if half of the horror directors out there that have used creepy dolls in their films were inspired by these things. But these dolls, even if they were a massive financial loss, made their mark on history, one way or another. And one of those ways just happened to be a really neat game about a house that's alive. Special thanks goes to B17 Balder, Dr. Nira, Chimera, DJ Zapper 128, and Fortunately Michael for being $5 patrons on Patreon. Thanks also goes to my other patrons, and of course you guys watching at home, for supporting me any way you can. As you can see, I'm back in the saddle again. Hope everyone had a good summer and Labor Day. I'm going to be trying out some things here on the channel, so bear with me these next few months as I figure things out. And hopefully, some of those videos will end up interesting you. Either way, thank you all again for watching the video. I hope all of you have a wonderful rest of your day.